Hello and welcome back to Mac at the Movies. Today I am joined with my best friend Chase.
Hello, hello.
And we are going over his favorite film of all time, the ultimate Halloween October classic, The Exorcist.
That's right. When he told me here, this old rascal, that he had a YouTube channel reviewing videos, I said, you let old dad know when it's time and we're going to do this thing.
And today is that day. We're releasing this on Halloween. This film was released originally December 26th, 1973.
Happy birthday, Jesus.
I know, it's a ballsy move too. This movie of all movies to get released on, like, right there at Christmas. So like back then theaters weren't open, so they didn't get a Christmas Day release. It was released the day after, which, hey, more power
well, you
to
know, in those days people pretended to enjoy their family. Today they just go to the movies.
Oh yeah. Released by Hoya Productions.
Hoya!
And directed by William Friedkin, who had also directed Killer Joe, The French Connection, The Hunted, and Rules of Engagement. This film stars Ellen Burstyn as Chris McNeil, who's the mother in the film. She also portrays an actress, how she makes her living in the movie. You have Max von Sydow, who plays Father Marin. You have Linda Blair, the head-spinning child, who plays Reagan. And you have Jason Miller, who plays Father Damien Karras.
That's right. So in preparation for this, I made some notes, so I apologize for having to look down, read a little bit, and get back with you. But, you know, I'm not a genius, and we're going to get through this. So, with your permission,
we'll carry on. By all means. Go ahead.
Right. So this film's basically about a young girl named Reagan who ends up getting possessed by a demonic spirit named
Pazuzu.
That's right. So her mother goes out of her way to get her the appropriate medical and psychological attention to try and figure out what the deal is with her daughter's declining mental and physical health. She's had a lot of troubling behavior. They do all this testing. And basically, at the end of the day, there's a panel of doctors. They sit her down in a room. They say, "Are you religious?" And she's like, "Nah, not really." You better go to the Catholics for this. We need some big guns for this deal. But at the end of the day, we all know the story. You know, there isn't really any spoilers. It was released in 1973. So I kind of want to get into why this movie was called the most cursed movie ever released. You worked in a theater, right?
I did. A lot of the stuff that happens, when we were doing the research for this, there's no way you could ultimately offend a crowded theater, or, you know, scare people witless to the degree that this movie did. So it was very.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking. So some of the things you would have had to deal with as a theater employee. And these were pretty widely reported in comments. There were tons of reports of people like fainting, vomiting in the theater, needing medical attention. There were also a lot of stories, I don't know how you guys would have handled this here, of people erupting into physical, literal violence, attacking each other, waiting to be seated to see the movie.
I don't know how we would have dealt with that. I think the worst thing, and if any of y'all know the legend of the Bell Witch in Tennessee, the most aggressive we had a movie theater was during the film An American Haunting. And the entire town of Adams, Tennessee came to that theater to see the movie. And, you know, Hollywood took the spin on the story.
Yeah.
That's what they did. And right after the movie, I remember the lights coming up, and I was standing there ready to clean the theater, and this man stands up and just starts screaming about how the movie was just BS. I mean, in full words. I don't know how many kids are out there watching this, and I want to do my best to keep my potty mouth at bay, because it gets pretty...
Keep it at bay.
Gets pretty bad. But he just upright didn't care. He wanted the world to know what he thought about that movie. But this right here is next level.
That was a Karen before we had Karens.
Oh yeah.
You see the manager. So the weirdest audience reaction that I saw when we were doing the research, and this was multiple reports, that women claimed that their miscarriages were induced by stress from watching the film. However, if you worked in the UK, you wouldn't have to deal with any of this. So the UK banned this movie because they said, quote, It was a path for evil to corrupt the human soul. So, you know, Americans, right?
Which is crazy. And to think what countries ban what movies, because I've seen some movies that are banned in other countries that are perfectly fine to watch here. And, you know, it leaves you really wanting to hug a teddy bear and just watch a Disney movie, because they are pretty bad. Even worse than this. I mean, some of these movies don't get theatrical releases, and rightfully so. But this one got a big theatrical release, and so it,
Big
you know,
push.
It had that range to piss off a lot of people.
So, getting back on set and some of the weird things that happened, there were a couple of injuries. Burstyn injured her back after landing on her coccyx. So what happened was, in the scene where Reagan slaps her mother, Burstyn goes flying backwards her mom. Well, the stuntman jerked her around on, you know, some sort of special effects cable. She landed weird and actually broke, you know, part of her back. And that was lasting injuries, you know, till current. Linda Blair said she's never been the same since filming this movie. So during the scenes where she's got the violent flailabouts, you know, we've all seen them. There was some sort of mechanical breakdown, you know, in the machine that would flail her about, and she had a slight fracture to her spine, and she has scoliosis to this day. You know, pretty incredible. Another weird thing that happened, so they had a fire on set. A bird flew into a circuit box. Of all the things, literally a bird flew into the circuit box, caught the house on fire that they were going to film in, burned the entire house down, with the exception of the bedroom where they filmed all the possession and exorcism scenes.
Which there's a fair amount of scenes shot in those movies, like key scenes. So it was probably, I mean, they could have rebuilt it, but
it literally, as production began.
Yeah.
So they had to soundstage a lot of it. But here's the craziest thing that we agree that we found. So there's a gentleman that was hired to do the some of the medical testing, you know, on film, and his name was Paul Bateson. In real life, he was a radiographer, and I apologize, I got to do my notes here. So the director Friedkin went around to the New York City hospitals and stuff, and he was trying to do as much research as possible to make all the tests look realistic. So he hired Paul Bateson, real life radiographer, to do the scene with all the blood. I mean, with the exception of the, you know, the spikes, you know, and the scene, you know, in the movie. This is really the only scene with a lot of blood, and a lot of people found it pretty disturbing. So Friedkin hired him. He wanted a pro on set to do it, talk through it with her as you would a normal patient, make it look as real as possible. While filming this movie, Bateson took over, and he had this terrible just draw to start drinking, just drinking heavily. Became a terrible, terrible alcoholic. In 1977, he killed a journalist, stole $57 from his wallet, his MasterCard, the guy's passport to buy booze, stayed drunk for 2 days on it. The only reason he was caught was because he called a journalist that wrote about the story to recount the murder and correct the article released in the paper. So that's literally the only reason this guy was caught, was because his pride took the best of him. Could have just walked away from it.
he told on himself because the story was inaccurate.
Yeah, the story was inaccurate. So look, you know, I saw this movie when I was 8. I honestly have no idea why my parents allowed me to watch it at that young age, but I did. I remember renting it one Friday night from the movie gallery, you know, that we had in town. For those that don't know, you used to actually have to physically go to a store, and you'd take the case of the cassette you wanted. Some stores you'd pull from behind, and you take it up to the counter, and they'd give you the VHS tape, Be Kind, Rewind, and you know, you'd watch it over the weekend. It's probably $3-4 a day or something. You know, you turn it in on Monday. You know, but we're 90s kids, so you know, it happens. You used to not be able to stream or watch stuff without commercials unless you wanted to buy it or rent it. But anyway, yeah, I saw this movie at a very young age, and it's been my favorite movie for a really long time. We watched it as adults recently, not nearly as shocking, you know, as it was for a child, but you know, it's a great movie. I love this film. I think it's a classic.
I will say that the first time I saw this film, I want to say I was hovering around that 12-year-old age range.
Much more appropriate, frankly.
Much more appropriate. Still, I was still very ignorant to the story and what the film was about. I just knew it was a scary film that I, you know, had to watch. and it was when they re-released it for the extended director's cut.
Oh, the spider walk.
Yeah,
See,
down
the
stairs.
version I saw didn't have the spider walk
Yeah.
in it. You know,
So,
originally.
I remember I was at my cousin's house. He lived in the Knoxville area, and we went there one weekend, trip with my dad, and he had pay-per-view back when I think you had to call in pay-per-views. Like, you had the
yeah.
cable box, but if you wanted to get a pay-per-view, you had to call it in. You couldn't just on demand with your remote. And I was just like, hey, can we rent The Exorcist? You know, it'd be a lot cooler weekend if we could do this.
It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
And, you know, he was just like, hey, ask your dad. I don't care. And so I asked my dad, and he was just like, well, I mean, if we're all watching it together, I don't see a problem with it. And so we rented it that night on pay-per-view. And, I mean, I wasn't shocked, but I was like in a new form of awe, because I had seen many different horror films up to that time. Because, you know, growing up, if my dad was away, my mom let me rent whatever I wanted. And with the exception of striptease, I could rent literally anything I wanted.
Showgirls?
I didn't get to rent Showgirls.
Okay.
Well,
Fair enough.
the local video store I went to didn't have it, but I did remember seeing striptease, and I wanted to rent it. And she was like, no, rent the one where they're ripping someone's face off. And I was like, okay.
Wholesome.
So many movies I got to rent growing up, and this was like next level horror, because it seemed real. Like it could actually happen. And I mean, if history's shown us anything, it has in some cases. Maybe not to the extreme that cinema shows us, but I definitely think at a young age, I mean, even still, like, I think 12 years old was a bit young for me to have seen this movie. I was glad that I got to, because it was great. Like, I wish I could go back to that first time watching it. Like, this is one of those movies I wish I could relive watching it for the first time. Like, just wipe it off, like, out of my memory, just eternal sunshine of a spotless mind, zap that out of my head, and watch it again for the first time.
The old zapper. So I know Blatty, the guy that wrote the book, and he adapted the screenplay for the movie. From what I understand, you know, and jury's out, but allegedly this was based on a true story. There was a young boy in the 40s, I think in the Chicago area. I think his middle name might have been Reagan, but my memory might be faded. But allegedly, you know, he based this story on what people reported was truth. You know, so that makes it even scarier, like you were saying. If it could happen, it's a little scary. You know?
I mean, now that we're talking about this, and completely off subject, and we didn't even go over this, but it makes me want to watch that Exorcism of Emily Rose again.
Oh, yeah.
Like that was a good. If any of y'all have seen it, I mean, it's nothing like The Exorcist, not at all. But it's still a fantastic movie. But
another one I like, since we're sidelining.
Yeah.
The Last Exorcism, it was kind of, like, it had a theater release, but it wasn't really that popular. And it was about a cat that did fake exorcisms. Like, he would set up, like, speakers in the room, and, you know, he would do fake exorcisms, and then he encounters where he has to do a real one. You know, kind of like a last ride. That was a pretty good movie.
Yeah, I remember seeing that one in the theater. There were some chatty kids in there. It was me and my friend, and then like 3 teenagers, and I wasn't about to have it. I remember.
Were you a grumpy bumpy?
I was a grumpy bumpy. I was like, hey, shut up! And, you know, they stayed quiet the rest of the movie. Looking back at it now, I'm like, I was that jerk. But, you know, it was quiet the rest of the movie, that's for sure.
It worked.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it worked. Yeah, so I would not consider myself an expert on this movie by any means, but I've watched it dozens of times. I've really enjoyed it. I saw it way too young. It kind of scarred me. I was scared of the dark forever, you know, probably for 2 years. But having said that, you got me on. We're talking about the movie. Did you have any questions you wanted to kind of gear towards me? Like, you know, seeing it at a young age, seeing it as an adult?
I mean, like, seeing it at a young age, because I asked him just the other day, like, how old do you think you would be cool with your kid being to see this movie? Because, I mean, it is graphic, especially with the crucifix scene. That's not, I mean, that's a lot of explaining to do.
Yeah.
It's, especially if they're not understanding what that is, and if they have questions or they decide to go to school and tell their friends that they watched a movie. Like, I mean, how would you go about that?
Yeah, at the risk of not wanting any more principal or vice principal phone calls. So my son, he's 14. He's in high school. He hasn't seen the movie, I know, because I asked him, but you never know what friends let each other watch. And frankly, again, like you said, there's a lot of stuff I don't want to have to explain or unexplain.
Yeah.
I think he's realistically probably old enough to watch the movie, but I don't know if it honestly has enough shock, awe, visual effect. I mean, I think the kid might be bored in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Also, he's not really a horror fan. Don't hit me. I know. I've tried.
You raised him.
Yeah, I know. But I don't think he really enjoys being scared. He does like to go to a haunted house or two, with friends at the Halloween time. But, he doesn't really dig it, He's not a big fan of the horror genre. So
yeah, I'm sure if I have kids one day, they'll probably be into football and hockey and all that stuff that I frankly don't care about. So it'll be all that fun stuff. But I mean, like, looking back at it now, like, I don't think I'd want to take away the first time I saw the movie. I mean, it's emblazed in the back of my head, like, just that whole evening. Like, I remember, like, going to bed that night, like, if we had to, like, walk to the bathroom late at night, it was, you turned lights on when you went from room to room. And I remember my brother, he ate, if you remember those like combo snacks, it's like a pretzel with some
pretzels.
cheese filling or something like that in it.
Oh, sure.
He ate way too many of those and ended up spending the night next to a bucket. So that wasn't the best evening for him, but he loves the movie to this day as well. But yeah, I don't think I would ever take that away. I remember in high school, one of my friends, she had asked her her grandmother if she could watch the movie, and she was like, I don't have a problem you watching that movie. If he wants to bring it over, that's fine. I have to be here and watch it with you though. So we watched it together, and there's one scene, and it kind of makes me giggle to this day. But the detective, when the detective shows up at the house,
smarmy old fella, isn't he?
Oh yeah, he shows up at Chris McNeil's house to ask some questions, and it was right after something had happened to Reagan, and there's like, excuse me, ma'am, there's a man at the door, and she's like, what man? And as he enters the house, he takes off his hat, and I remember saying with a very country drawl, a bald man. And they just started cracking up, and this was back in I don't know if kids still do this, but they would write like colorful notes and stuff like that, pass them to kids. And
I don't know if kids know how to write anymore.
Probably not. Everything's via text. So, but I remember, and you'd fold the notes with a little tuck and everything like that. I remember she gave me, it was a note, I unfolded it, and it just said big, bright, highlighted letters,
high
bald man.
A bald man.
A bald man. And it just always kind of stuck with me as something I liked about it. But like, seeing movies like this is a movie like if I have kids one day, this is what I'm looking forward to, like, showing, like, sharing them. Like, just watch this movie. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. But yeah.
So the theme that I heard that you had multiple times was, it's okay if we all watch it together.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, I was 8. I took the tape into my parents' bedroom. They had a VCR, and I put it in, and I laid on the bed and watched alone.
Oh, no.
I'm telling you, it was catastrophic, people.
I'm sure that's like absolutely one of those, like, I remember as an adult, I watched that film Sinister, and you have the Bagul creature that's always lurking in some corner. And as an adult, that made me, like, anytime I walk into a room and there's like a dark corner, I'm like, he's over there. I know it. But The Exorcist is a child. That kind of brings an extra level of fear.
Well, the problem too is that the main protagonist is a child.
Yeah.
Like, I think Reagan is, I don't know, she's probably like 10 or 12. I think she's probably 12 in the movie. She kind of acts sort of 12-ish. And you're sitting there watching at age 8, you're going, is this going to happen to me in 4 years?
Yeah.
Like, what's a Ouija board? How do I never touch one? You know, I never want to see one in my life.
See, like I remember playing with Ouija board when I was a
Mr.
kid.
Happy? Was that what
Captain Howdy.
Yeah, Captain Howdy. Man, I butchered that. But yeah, Captain Howdy. Yeah.
That which later, just a fun fact, if anyone's ever seen the D. Snyder film Strangeland, I believe that's the name of it, Strangeland. His character in the chat room is Captain Howdy, and then there's like a number after that or something like that.
A little homage.
Oh yeah. So I always thought that was kind of fun. But yeah, I at 8 years old, like putting that movie in, like I remember putting movies in when I was younger, like Halloween, or like one of them that bothered me a lot was Nightmare on Elm Street. Like the first one was always like, it just seemed very jarring with like loud noises, and I guess I didn't like that as a kid. That and like Child's Play. My mom had some of her old dolls that she had from, like, when she was a kid. I just remember like they just took up shelf space on the top shelf in my bedroom, and it's just something that was always there. I never
took a new meaning for you.
Yeah.
Huh?
After watching Child's Play, I just remember like going to bed at night. Like my brother and I shared a room, but I would sit there.
Look at the stupid dolls.
Yeah, you'd have the nightlight on, and then the dolls, and your imagination just runs everywhere. So, like that, at least I can kick a doll. You can't kick a demon.
No. No. When old Pazuzu wants in, ladies and gentlemen, he finds a route. He
just goes right on in there. I mean, and again, like, you don't really find out about the character of Pazuzu. Like, you know that Reagan's possessed. And to my knowledge, after I've watched this movie several times, I mean, we just watched it.
Yeah, they don't mention it in the first one. Yeah.
You don't get the name of the demon until the second one. And, you know, not to continue on with the second film all that much. That's, you know, another video or something like that. But yeah, like, you get the name of the demon in the second one, so you can, you know, reference it back to the first. But you can't really fight a demon the same way you can, you know, something else. At least Freddy Krueger, you can wake yourself up while holding him, and he comes into the real life and you can kill him. There's always some way to kill something. You can't know.
Well, I mean, I guess what we learned, you know, it's always that good versus evil. The way to defeat the demon was through the church.
Yeah,
you know, that was the kryptonite.
It was through the church, but it was also, and for this film,
it was sacrifice.
Yeah,
he had to take himself. Yeah.
So he had to give himself up to let her live. So, you know, and I don't know if it was
just the demon was smart enough to kill the pastor, the father that knew what he was doing.
Oh yeah.
So he leaves the inexperienced guy in there. He's like, "Take me," you know, and he did it himself. You know,
which in this movie you don't see anything that happens. You just see, you know, Father Karras. He leaves, and then he comes back, and, you know, Father Marin is dead in the corner on the ground or whatever.
And that, to me, that's one of the creepy scenes. Is she just like leaned against her bedpost, just giggling like a little girl?
Yeah.
Oh man!
In the second film, you see what happens in the room, and it's nothing like, you know, Hulk Hogan taking down Andre the Giant WWF style. I mean, it's very much like a spiritual, like, it's almost like a demonic force that you see. So it's a very interesting film. But all in all, like, when you think of this movie and you have to give it a rating or something like that, what comes to your mind? I mean, I usually do a 5-star rating, but man, like, shoot for the moon. If you want to do a 10-star, by all means.
On your rating, it's a 5 out of 5, and it's a 5 because I love the film. If I love the film, it's a 4 typically, but it's a 5 because I have that personal connection with this film at such a young age. I mean, it's been with me basically my entire life, you know. So it's 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, 100 out of 100.
Yeah,
100%. That's the rating. For
me, I got to give it a 5 stars out of 5. I mean, there's nothing I feel like this movie could do wrong, with the exception of offend some people. But as a film,
it's literally a classic.
Yeah,
it stands up.
I've seen it so many times. I saw it in the theater twice. Once the Bell Court in Nashville, Tennessee, they showed it during the midnight screening. I went to go see it for that, and it was the director's cut. Both times I saw it on the big screen, it was the director's cut. And then I saw it at a drive-in. So it was just amazing, great film to see. If anyone gets a chance to see it on the big screen, especially go see it. Especially if it's your first time, the big screen, like I saw it on like a 27-inch tube TV.
We had the old 25-inch Sanyo. I remember specifically. Yeah.
It was a little guy compared to what you got now, but I remember seeing it on the big screen, especially after having seen it before.
Yeah.
It's almost like it revives it a little bit because with the. It's like I want to rewatch this movie tonight, and I think I'm going to.
You bought a projector, didn't you?
I recently bought a projector. I haven't unpacked it yet,
Hey.
so it's there. Maybe
the opportunity is here,
enough.
people.
Oh yeah. So
Get my kid over here.
Well, I get Pazuzu and full screen action on the side of my garage.
All your neighbors will love it.
Oh, they will hate me for days to come. But yeah, total 5 out of 5. Fantastic movie. But anyway, I mean, is there anything else that you want to talk about this film?
No, I don't think. I should have looked up her name, and my memory's fading. But the lady they had play the voice of Reagan Possessed, the heavy smoker. You see possession films today, and they try to do it digitally. She nailed that performance. I mean, nailed it. I don't think I've heard a possessed person movie with a voice as good as just the lady talking in The Exorcist. That did the voice. So I also want to comment. I think Linda Blair's portrayal in this film is incredible, and I think she was an exceptionally talented young woman. And I truly hate that part of the curse of this film destroyed her career. Like, we Googled it. Look, people, she's got a good net worth. I mean, she's fine. But I think she had the makings of being one of the greats of that era.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, for whatever reason, her parents signed her up for this. Yeah. And, it sucks because I think if you look at her performance and imagine, she was probably mid-teenager playing a 10, 12-year-old. I mean, she did a good job.
Yeah. And, I mean, if her parents would have passed her up on this and she would have just done a couple episodes of like Charlie's Angels or something like that as like a background character, I don't think that she would go down in like the history books. Like, this movie's going on like
no. I mean, like, this movie made her, but I think it also kind of like it typecasts her definitely.
Big time.
She's basically in movies in the late 80s, early 90s where she has to go topless to get a gig.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I mean,
sucks.
But the one good thing about this movie is, I mean, she's going to have that cult following for the rest of her life. Yeah. I mean, she's going to be in history books. While we don't have, movie rental stores anymore, but with your very rare exceptions. I mean, the town I live in, I don't even know if the video store is still open. When I moved here, it was. But I haven't seen it open any time here lately, so I don't know if they're just closed for season or what. But you don't have video stores anymore, so you're not going to have that curious kid walking by and picking up this box like, what is this?
Because now it's like Netflix, right? Yeah. And I love streaming. You know that. You're a physical guy, I'm a streaming guy. I can spend 2.5 hours just looking at options on Netflix and not get anywhere, versus, like you said, walking around the store. I also want to say, listen, people, I don't know how wide your audience is here, okay? And I'm not asking for a number. I've purchased this movie, The Exorcist, 5 times. 5. Every time it gets borrowed out and never gets returned. Now, I finally bought it on Prime where we could just stream it and watch it together. I'm tired of buying the movie. Somebody return my copies, please.
Yeah. I mean,
that's all I want out of this. I want a copy back.
I have lent out a lot of things that I have not gotten back, or it comes back and I go to play it and it starts skipping and everything. That's
no.
Not a fan of it. So I like to lend people stuff, but yeah, I bought The Exorcist 3 times. Once on VHS, once on DVD, and then eventually the Blu-ray set with all 4 movies. And I just recently, I was lucky I got to see The Heretic, The Exorcist Part 2, at the recent 12 Hours of Terror at the
Oh,
Billboard.
cool. Yeah.
So that was cool. Not the greatest movie in the whole world.
No.
But you get some of the backstory.
Get some
You get to find out about Pazuzu. You get James Earl Jones.
Yeah. What's the prequel called? Exorcist? That came out in
I think it was just The
02 or
Exorcist, the
something.
beginning.
Okay. I remember watching that movie, when it was fresh. I have not seen it as an adult, to be clear. I may have been 18 when I watched it, but I really enjoyed that backstory. Of Father Marin's backstory. That was pretty interesting. Like that's where he encounters the demon for the first time.
I like getting into that, and then I like and not to go into great detail, but The Exorcist 3, which most people think should have been The Exorcist 2. Just because of the story and everything like that. You get Father Karras returns in that one. He's like in a psych ward. But his character also flip-flops with Brad Dourif's character.
Yeah.
And so you get that. You get another cop that is, have you seen this movie type guy. You have what is considered...
Do you like films?
Yeah. You have what's considered to be one of the scariest scenes in all of cinema in that movie. I mean, a lot of good stuff. That's one I definitely like to see on the big screen. It's a fun movie. Joe Bob Briggs recently did The Last Drive-In. I wouldn't say recent. It was about a year ago. It was during quarantine. But he did an episode of The Last Drive-In where he did The Exorcist Part 3.
Cool.
So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I definitely give this one 5 stars out of 5. Chase, you give it 5 stars out of 5.
A 10. It's a 10.
A solid 10.
Yeah. Well, everybody, thank you for indulging me. Thank you for the opportunity to do this.
Thanks for coming by.
I think I've been waiting a year to do this. And everyone's gonna be like, "You did this a year? You worked on this?"
Almost,
hey,
yeah.
I'm special. Okay, we're trying.
We're getting there. So, but yeah, everyone, thanks for stopping by. I really enjoy this. I want to do more of these videos where, I get a friend coming along and we talk about movies and stuff like that, especially if it's their favorite movie. I mean, I could go on about my favorite movie for the longest time, but frankly, it doesn't come close to the awe and excitement of The Exorcist.
The pizzazz.
But one day. But as always, thank you for stopping by. Always be good to one another, and we shall see you next time. Bye.
Happy Halloween.